Hi there, everyone, and welcome to the Athlete Cafe.
Hi guys, I'm Carly, former collegiate lacrosse player.
I'm Abby, former gymnast and collegiate dancer.
I'm Frances, former collegiate track athlete.
And I'm Emily, former collegiate volleyball player. Let's get into today's topics and see what's on the menu.
Large cappuccino. Orders up.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Athlete Cafe.
Yes, welcome back. It's a little different today.
I was going to say, the last episode is a little different as well, but we're keeping that trend going here with another different episode with my guest today, which is super exciting.
Woo!
Who do we have with us?
I'm Michael.
Michael.
New hire.
New hire. Michael has been with Sharpen Skills for about 2 weeks now.
Yeah, just about.
Just about.
Yeah.
By the time this episode comes out, it'll be about a
bit
month.
later, yeah.
But we are so excited to have Michael here.
Yes.
And just like Braden, who was in the last episode, we thought we would bring Michael in and kind of do a little interview-esque type episode just to give all of our listeners some insight into his background. And then he has a tennis background, so we thought it'd be really cool to just kind of have a deep dive into different mental aspects surrounding tennis. We've definitely had some tennis players come through. And I think a lot of tennis, the mindset with tennis blends into a lot of other one-on-one sports like golf. I know I've had a badminton player, running, right up Frances's alley. She is surrounded by another solo sport now.
Yes, yeah.
Not all
I
the
also
team
ran,
sports.
right?
You did, yes.
Let the record reflect. Yeah.
So why don't we start off and why don't you tell us who you are, Michael? Give us a background. We'll get more into the weeds of it, but start us off somewhere.
For sure. Yeah.
Favorite color?
From
Favorite color, favorite holiday.
Right. Yeah, what else? Social Security. No, I'm Michael. I'm from North Kingstown, Rhode Island, so not Long Island. It gets confused. It's its own state. Rhode Island, smallest one. Grew up loving sports, always watching them, playing them. Played like soccer, baseball, tried all the different ones. It wasn't until my sisters started playing tennis, and that's what I kind of just followed in their footsteps, started to fall in love with the sport more so going into high school, and then a little bit after that when I started teaching tennis. And then I also ran in high school and did cross country, indoor track, outdoor track, the whole shebang. And senior year was pretty cool. It was like the first year, our spring season, you're allowed to like do 2 sports in one season. So
nice.
Just your senior year?
Yeah, they just like made the new rule my senior year. So like the senior spring, when you're kind of already in college, you're just kind of maybe coasting in your classes towards the end. I did outdoor track and tennis, which was kind of cool. So
nice.
a little bit of a different.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a lot, a little bit, but like I would run on my own. So I did like declare a primary sport, which was tennis. So that's when I knew that was more the sport that I like. Not to say that I didn't like running, but running gets a little tiring after a little bit, so I'm sure
a little bit
can relate to at some points.
What did you run in track?
I was always distance, so it was anywhere from the 1,000, the 15, and the super fun the 3K, the 3,000.
Yeah,
really fun.
Super fun.
That is tough. I'm not a runner, so I always love listening to runners talk and kind of just go through that because I think it is such an interesting mindset, and the sport itself is just.
And that was a little different from me because I had more of the shorter events. I was like the 4, the 8. Didn't do more than the 8, so definitely don't.
It's usually the breaking point is the 800 meters. That's when you know what you fall into, whether you're more the speed or you're more distance.
True.
Did you feel like there were any similarities between, not like actual physical sports themselves, but tennis and running, of just like why you gravitated towards those two? Is there anything about them that you felt like you would do them both at the same time?
I never thought that you never could do it at the same time. And then everyone's like, you have to do outdoor track. I got really good at running, started to improve. Same thing with tennis. So I was on JV the first couple of years and kind of worked my way, improved my skills physically, improved mentally also. And that's how I kind of got to those varsity spots, got to move up the ladder, if you will. And so it was just really exciting to just see like the similarities that were between the two sports, you know, being able to push your body, being able to make sure that if you're not competing at your best, still being able to push and try to win. Those are sometimes like not mutually exclusive. You know, you might not be playing your best, but you still have to find a way to run your best, play your best, and try to still win the match or, you know, compete in your race.
Right. Do you feel like it was like similar mindsets that you had to have, like being in sports that were more like your performance is based off of you, right? Like you don't have a team that, I mean, like, yes, there's track team, tennis team, right? But like it's more of an individual, like your outcome is based on your performance kind of thing. Do you feel like that was like very similar mindsets kind of going into those two?
That's a good question. I would, I don't know. I've never really given that much thought. I guess it would be. Thinking back, like, you had to push it's just about, I feel like, pushing yourself. So I had to push myself to a certain point, and then just kind of figure it out from there, what kind of day that I was going to have, if I was physically tired or mentally tired, and then still just trying to push past each thing, I think.
Right. Yeah. Because it's like, I just feel like it's totally different. Like you said, like you have to push yourself, and like, what do you have that day? Because your outcome is based on you. Mm-hmm. And so, like if you feel tired or like just lethargic that day, you don't have 7 other people on the field to like make up for that. And so like, I feel like that aspect of those sports is just so unique, and it's like just a different mindset to have.
Yeah, so you are your motivation. You have to try to find it no matter where it is, no matter what day it is, no matter how you practice or play the day before, no matter how you're going to practice or play tomorrow. But yeah, you have to find it.
Which I find really interesting because I just think back to, as a volleyball player, being on a team my whole life. Like, yes, there were moments where I had to obviously do my part to help the success, but in a more one-on-one sport, I think to myself of like, how would I have competed in that way? Like having it all just on my shoulders.
Right.
Crazy. It is quite crazy. And I think a lot of times you see like the people in team sports gravitate towards more team. And I can see with you guys, it's like the more individualized sports, you guys gravitate towards kind of doing those and just pushing yourselves in those.
Yeah, your sources of confidence are completely different in a team versus an individual sport.
Mm-hmm.
You do have coaches around, but it's still on you to try to figure out what they're saying to you, piece it together, and just still try to figure out how to compete.
Right.
And I think that's the biggest thing is you have to compete. You're competing with yourself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're competing against other people, but you have to compete with yourself at the same time. And it's just such a different perspective. And granted, that's true in team sports, but you have your teammates that can pick you up, that can cover, if you pick up some slack for you if you're having an off day. But if you're having an off day for you, that's
everything.
Yeah, that's everything.
Yeah. And it did make me feel better if I was having an off day, even though I played a team sport. It still felt pretty crappy, but at least I was like, okay, so and so pulled the weight, we got the win. Like, I'll go back next game and try to do better. So I think it's really cool to have, I think, more perspective on like within our team at Sharpen, that individualized sport and just even the experience you had. So I guess what made you want to take high school sports into college? And give us like kind of your college story here.
My high school to college athletic experience changed a little bit. I knew I was kind of burnt out from running.
Okay.
The only way to get better at running is to keep running and run more and run harder and run faster. And I just couldn't really do it anymore. I hit the point that I wanted to. Every athlete at some point has to know when they're going to retire. So I kind of knew at that point I was done with just running, and competition and stuff like that. I still run recreationally with friends and stuff, still do 5Ks every once in a while, but it was more just I'm just kind of done competing at this level. And I wanted to more focus on my education. So I still love tennis, still wanted to play tennis. So I wanted to try out for I went to the University of Rhode Island. That's where my undergrad was. That's where I got my bachelor's in science and psychology. But I knew I still wanted to compete. I just knew I just didn't want to do it at, the Division I level. So I joined the club tennis team there. Still got that competitive nature, still had all these practices, but it was more on me to do the work, which is something as an individual sport athlete, I was like, okay, perfect. Like I know how to piece it in my schedule, fit it in, and still get that competitive competition piece, still be part of a team, which was super cool and super fun. And I enjoyed every second of that. But going into college, my freshman year, I had an injury. I injured my right wrist at work. So I fell down the stairs at work, injured it. Couldn't try out for the team. They only try outs in the fall. So that's when I kind of took a step back and thought, do I still really want to do this? Sophomore year I did. I went back, I played and tried out for the team, but I went into more the coaching realm of tennis. I taught at Point Judith Country Club, taught youth athletes there. Monday, Wednesdays was the younger group. It was 3 to 8 year olds. So more babysitting because a 3-year-old can't really play tennis. Some of them can. The really, really elite high level ones can, and it's cool to see. And then the Tuesday, Thursday group, the older kids, that's kind of where the you'd really put in work with them and tactically teach them, technically teach them. And I would always just try to focus more on the mental side of how you kind of bridge the gap to playing better.
Yeah.
So,
I just have like 3 thoughts that came from that spiel you just gave, so it's hard to bear with me. But going back to that idea of like you making that decision to stop running competitively, right? Did you feel like that was a very big moment for you? Because I think we do have a lot of athletes that kind of go through that time of burnout, of just questioning, like, do I want to continue this? And we always say, like, or at least I do, people don't talk about it. It's not a common conversation because who wants to say that they want to quit their sport? Like, that's not how you compete. That's not how you get better.
That's not the athlete mindset, right? Like,
but there's a big fact to it. And I think for you, how did that conversation come about? How did you handle that? Was it like a whole identity shift for you? Like, how did that kind of impact your just experience as you were going into college?
yeah, it definitely was an identity shift. Like I ran 365 days a year. You run year
running.
round. It's part of running if you really want to get into it and get good at it, I think, at least. So it was definitely a shift. I felt like it was a good shift. Like I said, I wanted to focus on my education. I still was joining things in college too, just to get that social aspect. So more what I was focusing on, and still did the club tennis. That way I could still get that competitive side out that I always love about myself. So that identity was still there, being competitive and loving, to compete and play and do things. So I just transferred that kind of. It was more of a like life skill transfer rather than a super big shift.
No, I love that, because I think there is a piece of that and we did a whole episode on athlete identity, or at least part of it, but this idea of like you have so many other parts to yourself and you don't have to give up running altogether. It's just more of like, okay, I realize that this isn't where I want to take my competitiveness, and I still have other areas, or I still have other things that I can do to fulfill my life. And I think that's really cool, just not only for you to bring into your mental performance coaching, but just in your own life experience to be able to be like, I made this decision for myself. I knew wasn't what I wanted to do anymore, and I did it, and I felt good about it, and I think that's amazing. It's really cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I think because like every athlete's experience, like kind of what we talked about in the athlete identity episode of like you at some point you hang up your jersey, like you're done competing, whether it's after high school, college, professional, like at some point you hang it up. And like every athlete's story is like different, and like how they process that. So yeah, and I think especially like with running, it's and I think some other like individual sports too, you don't have to give it up completely. Like you can always revisit it or come back to it. Like running, like I mean, there's so many people out there running 5Ks and marathons, like of all ages, and so I know tennis too, like you can continue that, and golf is something.
Lifelong sports.
Right, yeah. So I think that too, it's like a little bit different of a mindset, because like if you're on a football team and you're done after college, there's not like
leagues or
right. There's not a lot of options to continue that like at the same competitiveness. So yeah, I think it's also different in that way. But
so my second thought out of what you just said in the beginning was this idea of like you choosing to play at the club level versus saying like, I want to go D1 at the University of Rhode Island. And I think not all of our athletes, but we've all, I think, touched on for some kids who want to play in college, like what that looks like for them. And I know even for myself, like I was the D1 dreams, only want D1, like that's my goal, it's my dream, which is great. But like, I think there's a lot to be said about the competitiveness, the lifestyle that still exists at the club level. And I don't think a lot of people talk about that. I had a few friends that played club volleyball in college, and I think they would have beat my team, my D1 team. Like, I think a lot of that is kind of thrown under the rug and not really expressed enough. So I think I really like how you chose that path and you loved it. And I think that's a lot of light to be shed on, maybe in a different episode, but just kind of what that path was for you. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's cool that you have that experience, because like in high school, I feel like a lot of athletes collectively, it's like, oh, Division One. It's like Division One or nothing, right? But there's so many other like options that still like you still get the same like level of experience like in it. So
level of competitiveness.
And
Right.
the competitiveness level is still there. And that's what I realized when I eventually kind of getting back to my more background and education path. When I got my master's at Springfield College in sport and exercise psychology, the Division III level, it was a very highly competitive, still Division III school. And what they had access to was just incredible compared to most even D1 teams. The fact that each team was assigned, you get your own like athletic trainer, because there's all these athletic training students. You have an athletic counseling student that you'd get a mental performance coach from our sport and exercise psychology program. So you have this, you have this full team around you. And this at the Division III level. So granted, you're not really maybe getting a athletic scholarship because they don't have them at that level for the most part, but you are probably getting some sort of, academic scholarship maybe to go there and compete in that sport. And you see sometimes even at the club level, you see these guys, the UCLA club team there. I remember there's one kid at the national tournament we went to down in Florida. He was so good, but he just didn't want to play Division I tennis.
yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, nothing wrong with it. Same thing, there was great athletes that were playing at this Division III smaller school in Springfield, Massachusetts that were so talented and probably could go and get drafted in the MLB draft. He's really asleep, huh? Loving it.
Yes.
But could play in professional baseball, but he's playing at a D3 school. So there's definitely different paths and avenues to get there. It might be easier, and it's great to have the goal to get in Division I, but there's still different levels of competitiveness. If you are maybe burnt out, or you maybe want to take a different path, or you want to focus on your education, there's still ways to be competitive and play your sport and be good at your sport. And then similar to that individual aspect, back to more my background, is it's still on you to try to want to do all this stuff, what you want to do, how you get there, how serious you take it.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important part of, I know we talk a lot about just how diverse our team is as it's growing, and I think just to bring that perspective in for a lot of us that, you played Division I, ran Division I track.
Played track.
Played running. So, triggered,
Division I volleyball
Right.
for it at the level it was, but Carly Division III, Abby Division III. We have such a diverse group of people for that, and I think it's really cool just to have this melting pot of all of those experiences to be able to give that to all of the athletes, whether you're listening here today or end up working with Michael or any one of us, right? It's such a valuable piece.
And I also just adding to that, it's something that my high school coach kind of talked me through, when I was looking into going into college and all of that, because he kind of talked me through it doesn't matter if you go Division II, III, whatever, your talent and ability will still get brought out at any of those levels. And so it's really more what do you want out of that experience, and what path do you want to take with that. Your talent and ability doesn't change where you go. So
If you like what you're listening to, be sure to follow the Athlete Cafe on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. You can find us wherever you enjoy listening to your podcasts. Hope you enjoy the rest of the episode.
but yeah,
Cool.
anyways.
So you talked about undergrad a little bit. So what made you decide to get your master's, try and do mental performance coaching, this piece of it? What was even from an undergrad perspective, what made you interested in this field, and kind of where did you think you'd end up?
How'd I get to here?
Yeah. How did you get to here today, sitting with us?
It's a really long story. My junior year, I remember it, junior year of undergrad at the University of Rhode Island, URI, I did something I never do, and I read a magazine article. I picked up something and read it. It's absolutely
lovely.
floored. Yeah, crazy. I was
my God.
this lunch, I was man, what am I going to do? There's no one in the office. I talked to the club, and I'm no one there. I'm not going to bother the professional staff that I sometimes bother. So I was you know what, I'll read.
Do something wild and I'll read.
Absolutely wild. I picked it up. I was reading it. I was seeing my PB&J, and I found this article about this guy, Josh Leifrak, who waited tables for 10 years, went to Ithaca, ended up at IMG, ended up on the Chicago Cubs, was their mental skills program director kind of there, and they won a World Series in 2016, and he was on that staff. And part of the reason in that culture change of how they were able to break that curse of that 108-year drought. So I was like, that's exactly what I want to do. So every class, everything that I kind of did after that was kind of geared towards getting into mental performance, sports psychology, learning more about it. Found online research programs, ended up at Springfield. It was the closest one geographically, kind of. Got affected. COVID kind of was in there for a little bit. So it's a different kind of master's program experience, but nonetheless graduated, got the degree, and then just I started working. I was working in the service industry, restaurant, serving, bartending, similar to him, reached out to him too, connected with him, which was super cool. And then ended up after I graduated from Springfield, I was like, what's next? And I just went on the Ask website and just started applying to jobs constantly for 8-9 months. So it was definitely a grind. And then I eventually landed on this one, went through the whole process, lots of interviews, went out here, kind of saw Cleveland.
Was it your first time in Ohio?
It was not my first time in Ohio.
Okay.
It was my first time in Cleveland. I went to a conference in Columbus once, which it was super fun. So I was like, all right, Ohio's not all that, what it's made out to be, maybe.
It's not that bad.
Not that bad. The seafood isn't really up to par compared to the East Coast.
Okay.
Something I learned
understand.
hard in Columbus. The mistake of having some not the best seafood.
At least Cleveland's closer to the lake, so hopefully the seafood's a little better.
I love my apartment right on the lake. Can see
the water.
If I was landlocked, I don't know if I would last here as long as I have. And it's only been 2 weeks.
It's not bad. You have a whole list of places to check out from Carly.
No, exactly. Yeah. I have a whole list.
We're
Been
helping
checking it off. Been loving it so far. The couple weeks that I've been here, bought a couch this past weekend, so finally settling
Wild.
in. Yeah, wild, making it official.
Yeah.
So yeah, ended up here, and then now we're on this
Now we're
podcast.
here.
It's crazy. We get to talk
Yeah.
about me, which is something I don't like to do. So.
Well, you're doing a good job at it.
Yeah.
Well, good. I know. And then, like I always say, and I've said this multiple times, but, being more in the counseling aspect and being able to create this business, the side of the business at Sharpen Skills Training, to be able to provide people like you who are coming out of grad school with these very specific degrees, like their jobs just don't exist out of school. It's hard to find that. And so
For sure.
being able to connect and convince you to move out here to buy into our team and do the work that we're doing, it's super exciting, and I feel very grateful to be able to provide you with hopefully this job that you enjoy.
I've enjoyed it so far. Yes.
Good.
Not leaving yet.
Good. Glad to hear that. So let's talk a little bit about some aspects of just the mental performance within tennis itself. So your experience.
Hopefully we have enough time.
Yes.
Go for a while.
Doing good. I guess one of my things is this idea of, as I've worked with some of my more individual sport clients, whether it's tennis, golf, track, but what do you feel about this idea of this composure that you have to have with, who you're playing against yourself, but you're also playing against your teammate, and it's a very mental sport. How do you or not your teammate, but your opponent? How do you balance that?
Oh, in doubles, you do have to play against your teammates sometimes. So
True.
it is. You're not wrong there. You're playing yourself. You have to, convince yourself that you're not having a bad day or having a good day, or what you kind of need to do to just, before you even get into the match, and even while you're in the match, to kind of maintain your mindset of just point by point, or I need to do this. I need to hit the ball there. This person has a weaker backhand. And then you're also then playing that opponent. You have to figure out what they're going to do, what their game plan is possibly, and then just try to go out there and execute. So it's definitely difficult. You definitely had better days. And the strangest thing with tennis, and if you play tennis and you're out there, you might know what I'm talking about, but like you could be winning and up, and then it takes one miss, one little miscue, mishit, something you can't believe, the wrong footwork, and you're just losing. You lost it. And you're winning, but then eventually the opponent starts catching up because you dropped in your level. Their level's kind of raising. They can sense you're frustrated. So it's definitely something, just kind of regulating yourself throughout the entire match, and just trying to, beat yourself while also beating the person across the net. And sometimes if you're playing doubles, you have to kind of pick up your partner. Your partner helps pick you up, and it's definitely a balance you have to have. You have to have good communication with them. You have to try to find that balance too with them. Finding the right partner when you do it, it's magical. I had a partner when my junior year of high school when we were playing, and it was because you kind of pick that person and that's your like duo. You're not like who's the best two, and then we'll put them together. It's who you work with best. Okay. At least at our high school it was, which was super helpful and nice. And we kind of could communicate without saying anything. We knew where the other one was going to be, which is super cool to kind of see. You liked being at net more. I had the running background, so I could run and track down balls a little bit better, and then he would kind of finish off the point. So it was a good balance that we had there.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
What do you feel like in thinking about that, mental performance wise, what you know now, going through all your education, what do you think is the most important piece to kind of focus on when trying to battle yourself and battle your opponent in singles, kind of as you go through that?
Yeah. Routines were definitely the most helpful thing that I kind of found to help balance out myself and really just, sharpen, sharpen my focus.
Comes up more than you think.
Had to say it. So that was kind of the biggest thing. And there's, pre-match, everyone has the same thing. You warm up the same. You're hitting, you're just rallying a little bit. You're then going up to net volleying. So the pre-performance, and that's what I think across most sports, you're stretching, you're doing this, you're doing that.
Right.
And then it kind of falls on you, for during the match and then after the match. Your coaches really, I feel like, harp on what we need to do beforehand. We need to warm up, you need to stretch, you need to do this, do that. And then after that, it was kind of on me. So most tennis players have it. Most professional tennis players have it. I bounce the ball a certain amount of times. Right. I set my feet in the certain spot every time. Before I'd, return a serve, I'd spin my racket a certain amount of times. And that just kind of helped me center myself in the moment, figure out what I need to do, and then just kind of tactically execute it. But mentally, I was there, which was super helpful. And I would always, it's easier said than done, but try to take a point-by-point approach because tennis is very indiscriminate. Each point is worth the same amount. You could have this amazing, long 30-shot rally, and you win that, and then the next point you could double fault. And those are worth the exact same value, which is just something that's absolutely crazy. And I think that's why tennis is such a mental sport, because you could just have such a high, and then you go to such a low immediately. And then how do you kind of balance that out? So that's routines, I think, were the biggest thing for me in singles and doubles. When I'm playing by myself, it was, doing all that. When I'm playing with my teammate, make sure we're communicating, high fives, things like that to keep that energy level.
And having that routine helps, as you said before, like just regulate a lot of like what's going on and kind of like bring you back and center yourself in those moments. So.
Yeah, I know, because I've shockingly never ever tried tennis before.
No, never.
We're going to change that.
I know. I really need to. I've been saying I need to try it. Tried pickleball, not tennis though.
Yeah.
But just in watching, I know Wimbledon just finished up, which was crazy.
Yes.
I've recently watched I know we were talking about that Breakpoint documentary on Netflix, which if you haven't watched that, go watch it. It's super cool.
We're not sponsored though by Netflix.
No.
We're just saying this because we love it.
Just love it. But I never obviously realized that tennis was such a mental piece, but to think of just all of the different facets now, especially with this more mental performance background, what actually is involved. It's the emotional control, the being able, like you said, to be able to trust your skills. And even if you do have this really terrible play, to come back and have that amazing play to follow it up with that same point percent, the trust, the emotional control, the routine, all of that, the confidence, even still of I remember when Isla went up against Serena Williams and beat her last year to finish out her career. That's crazy. Can you imagine? No. Oh. So I think there's so many points to it, but I love that you harp on that routine, because I do think that at the core of it is what you need to be able to fall on.
Yeah,
for sure. That's, and then even that was the kind of during, and then to get in the after piece, I'd put everything away a certain way, grab my stuff, my gear differently, take it off differently, stretch, roll out, kind of debrief with the team and my partner and our coach too. So that was also just part of it. And then it was just kind of from there, it's more we'd go eat somewhere afterwards. So that was always a big piece too, which is nice that our coach was kind of focused on our nutrition piece, make sure that we're not getting home, because it's, for Rhode Island standards, a long bus ride was 30, 45 minutes. It's really crazy, I'm sure, from Ohioans. So it was a long time, all right? It was really long. And if you ever meet anyone from Rhode Island, 15 minutes is the max I want to drive. So
Dang.
That's crazy.
That's
yeah.
wild. You would not have liked my 8-hour bus trips.
Yeah.
I would not have.
New York
yeah.
and all that from PA.
Mm-hmm.
They were miserable.
Yeah.
How do you feel you were personally with composure? Were you one of those athletes that like freaked out, banged like through your racket?
Yeah, that's the next big piece, I think, is like self-talk and what you kind of see demonstrated on the court. I wasn't ever really like that. The most hyped up I would get is in between points when I would high five my partner if we did really well.
Nice.
But I think there's like zones, and I remember talking about it in our like grad program. There's like zones of optimal functioning, and mine was always kind of that like lower zone. I was very even keeled throughout.
Yeah.
Especially in singles, I feel like you needed that. In doubles, I was also like that. My partner was the one that just kind of ebbed and flowed, and I would just be consistent. That way, he could come to me and we could work that
Balance,
stuff out. But definitely trying to keep your composure as much as possible. It's really hard, and then sometimes you do get really hyped up, but make sure you know what you kind of need to energize yourself. Make sure you know what those like kind of drainers are, and then finding that middle ground, that neutral.
And I think too, how did you feel with just like when if you were playing against an opponent, singles or doubles, that was like going crazy? You try to keep the even keel, but how is it to have to play against that? Yeah,
another little part of like the routine, back to like the little routine part, I would look away. I'd just be like, man, this person's whack. And I would just start like playing around, playing around with my strings, adjusting the strings, maybe like tying my shoe. They're going off, and in my head mentally I just thought, I have them now.
Right.
It is such a mental mind game sometimes. You play, there's gamesmanship that goes on for sure too with it. And if I ever saw my opponent getting frustrated, I would just start playing faster.
Yeah.
I want to get them in this state and make them,
keep them
there
panicked.
for as long as possible, keep them panicked, keep them flustered. And there's definitely like a little gamesmanship piece to that too. But that's what I would kind of do if someone else is freaking out. I'd be like, I would just look away, look for my teammates that were kind of watching. They would be like, what's going on? Or like my coach. And then just knowing what I needed to do to kind of, keep myself at neutral.
Yeah. I definitely, I think that's something that one of my tennis athletes that I see, she brought up, and she was going into a tournament, and she was worried that she was going to have to play against her doubles partner, which was like an interesting aspect that we kind of like talked through. But she said that her doubles partner was very like just calm through everything. Like you could not read emotion on her face, whether it was happy or like she was frustrated. Like you just couldn't see that. And she said that like that aspect of her like really threw off her opponents, like not being able to like read how they're feeling. But then she talked about herself, and she's like, I'm the total opposite. Like she goes way up here to way down here, and it's just constant battle up and down. So I just think that's like an interesting aspect, like with tennis, of like having that mental piece of like you can tell when someone gets frustrated, and you can like press on that more
a little bit. And that's the other thing too. It's weird. It's not like always like, it's not a bad thing to be up and down. It works for people really well. Right. But it's just knowing what works best for you, and then just trying to keep that to yourself, focusing on the you part. You can't really try to focus on that other person, because otherwise, you're out of your routine. Your self-talk kind of is probably bad to yourself as well. So
yeah. And talk a little bit more about like that self-talk, and like what helped you in your experience, or like what have you learned more about that you feel like you could have used more of, like all of that.
all the self-talk. Talk about the self-talk. There's different parts of it. I always, it's kind of taught. It's like positive, negative, and instructional. And there's definitely so much instructional self-talk that goes on in tennis, because you're like, I needed to put more topspin on that. I should have sliced it better. I don't know. I'm doing the hand motions like I'm playing, but I am. And that's a very big important piece to it. You'll see it all over the court, so it's helpful. It's super helpful, because you're just adjusting yourself and talking to yourself, and usually that's positive. But the positive and negative part, I always look at it as like constructive and deconstructive. I try not to put that kind of absolute
positive,
value
negative,
on it.
Right? Yeah.
So that was like the biggest thing, is like if I am playing well, I'm doing this, but like if I hit a double fall, I would you kind of maybe get down on yourself, or you miss this easy shot. You're like, oh, like how could I just miss that? But I would always add like a but to it, like a negative self-talk but statement thing. And I'd just be like, but I'm going to like, I know I need to get this next first serve in. I know where I need to hit it, and just kind of refocusing after that. You know, you have to have a very quick kind of almost like amnesia, like, you know, mind to play this sport, I feel like, because you have to leave that past behind, but you also can't go too far ahead and be too future focused, because if you're not in that point, you're not focused on that point, you're probably not going to win that point.
Right.
So that was kind of like the self-talk I always had to myself. It was very much always trying to be in a positive state, and then that instructional part, like, oh, I just need to do this next time, or I have this that I need to try to do instead.
Yeah, I always talk about that with my athletes, because, you know, people think of self-talk as like, oh, I'm so great. Oh, I can do
all these
it,
fluffy positive
you know?
things.
And I'm like, there's a time and place for stuff like that. But I think you know yourself best, and you know what you need to hear. And like, yeah, if you double fault, that does suck. Of course it does. But if you're going to let that tear you down and, you know, stick with you as you continue on in the game, like, it's not going to be helpful. So it's fine to like acknowledge it. I always say you have to acknowledge it to get it out of your system, and then adding that but statement of like what you can do better, you know, what you need to focus on differently. That's where you want to get to, because I think the high level athletes, whether you're in middle school, high school, college, professional, like, if you have that distinction at any age, that's where the game changer is. And it's still up to your personality. Some people need the fluffy stuff, and some people need more of the more constructive, more hardcore type of things, and people can handle it differently. But I think there needs to be a healthy balance of a little bit of both, and it's cool just to hear the way you describe that within your experience.
And I like that. I like when self-talk can be like instructional on like what, like, there's a lot of skill with tennis and like a lot of like little
you
things.
See it a lot. You'll see it a lot. There's a lot of self-talk on the tennis court. It's one of the main big mental skills that most people need to try to hone in on and work on, because whether you know it's there or not, it's 100% there. It happens, whether it's a come on or let's go after you win a big point, or whether you're just kind of like, man, I need to like brush up more. I need more topspin on this. And you're just kind of literally just going like this with your hands. And the other person looks across the net, they're like, oh, like, what's he doing? What's that signal? And
again, kind of bringing it back to like that individual type of sport. Like, you're the only one out there with yourself. And so like that self-talk is huge in those kind of sports, because I mean, like, if you're on the field or on the court, like, sometimes you have that aspect of like your teammates like, oh, like, get the next one, like, you're good, like, pick yourself up, like, you have that aspect, but not in those individual sports. Like, it's just you on the tennis court, or it's just me on the track.
Just you on the course, you know?
So definitely self-talk is huge in those moments.
What do you think is, knowing what you know now, going through your master's program, starting to get in your first like big career with what you went to school for?
My big boy job.
What is one thing that you've learned that you wish you would have known while you were playing, or what's something you wish you would have maybe been better at while you were playing in high school or college?
Really good
mentally
question. I guess mentally, from the mental side of things, because I felt like I did everything, I got better, where physically that's where I was at my best, but mentally I feel like it was just knowing what my motivations were, what was my why, why am I, you know, why am I doing this, why do I still want to do this, what are those like sources of confidence that I want to draw on. And when I finally went through, you know, the education part, when getting my master's, I like was learning more about that. And I was like, oh yeah, wow, that's like super cool. Like I always said that to myself, and you like think back, I was like, I always cared about my performances first, like whether like all the other like sports teams that I would root for growing up, like those would come after, but it was always like kind of like what I was kind of focused on was that. And then I was like, oh, what other, like, where else can I draw these sources from? And I was like, I always watch sports, so I was like, that's where you can draw this from, kind of those experiences, those mastery experiences, those kind of visual learning experiences. And even throughout our career, our coaches kind of focused on the mental side a little bit. Like we did a lot of like visualization and imagery practice. Sometimes we'd be like just like laying there and we'd like think about like our match tomorrow, like what do you see yourself doing well, what do you see like you need to kind of work on, and like what that feeling was like too, which is something that I feel like not every coach, not every team, not every sport kind of focuses on sometimes.
Yeah, it's really cool that they did that. And I like this idea, that motivational piece. Like, I love going through that with my kids when it's applicable. And I think it's very, like, they have a light bulb moments when we go through that. Because I don't think they always realize why they're doing what they're doing. Like, they love basketball, they love soccer, whatever their sport is. But it's like, okay, why the practices are hard and you're tired and, you know, you're sore. Why are you showing up every day?
Right.
Just
Why do you keep pushing yourself?
Why do you keep pushing yourself?
Why do you even get into the sport in the first place?
Right.
I got into it because my sisters were playing it. I was like, oh, I can do it, and just kept, you know, doing the lessons with them, and then did it on my own because I was like, oh, I know how to play this. Like, I could probably like get far with it. Maybe it's a good piece. Like, try to make friends. Like, meet up with the guys.
So many pieces to it. But a lot of times I don't think. I mean, subconsciously, I think kids know that, or like even me, I probably. That was why, but I never thought about it.
You never thought about it or like said it, wrote it down,
out
did any of that stuff, which I think is, looking back, something that I wish I more maybe focused on is like, why did I just hit 100 serves at practice? Why did I just go through like 2 hours of hitting? Why did I just run 13 miles or do 14 400s, you know?
The why definitely gets you through those hard days too, like if you're able to kind of like reflect on it. So how do you view tennis now? Like, do you view tennis differently now that you have like all of this background knowledge on mental performance?
I definitely view it differently. I definitely like seeing it, and I kind of went through it. I taught for so long. I think that kind of inflection point, that changing point for me was when I broke my wrist and kind of transitioned into the more like coaching side and just teaching it, getting back down to the basics and showing it off, but then realizing I'm like, wow, this is like really like super mental sport. Like, I always thought of it as like, technically I need to do this, tactically I need to do this,
which is true.
And those are important aspects and you should not focus on those, but it is such a mental sport, and there's times where you feel like you practice really well the day before and then you have a match the next day and there's that connection missing, and it's mostly that mental kind of like emotional, all those pieces that you're feeling. And it kind of like brought it up, like the Wimbledon, the finals, both the men's and the women's, they're all physically gifted, and what's separating those top players is the mental ability to be there, show up, controlling your emotions throughout the entire match, and just trying to focus on winning and staying in the present.
Yeah, definitely.
No, I love that. I think that's really cool. And I think it's cool that you have, because I think we all pretty much do have the play experience, the education, and the coaching background. And I think that definitely makes just like a full encompassing picture.
Right,
it looks differently on that coaching end for sure, and you kind of like piece together a lot more things. Having that experience. So it's cool. And even just how you've coached 3-year-olds all the way up through high school, college, basically now.
Before they went out to high school. And then a little bit in college too. I coached a team in there at that point. Which
is super cool just to see the varying levels of like that mental piece. I mean, obviously the younger kids are just learning the skills, but I mean, even still
they're
like
just there.
inserting the mental side a little bit, because it's going to get there for sure. And a lot of those kids do get frustrated, but no, that's awesome. Cool. Anything else mental performance wise for tennis you'd like to share with the people?
Not if we don't want to be here all day.
Gotta get a episode part 2.
It'll be part 2, 3,
deep dive into tennis.
7. It'll be like the Fast and Furious movies. There'll be an insane amount of them for no reason. We'll get to tennis part 10.
Oh my gosh.
No, I think the opportunities are endless, and we're definitely going to bring you back on here for whether it's tennis or whether it's just other topics and whatnot. And we're super excited to have you as part of our team and just to get to continue to know you and have you working with some of our kids. We're super excited.
Looking forward to it. Can't wait to get that first client.
I know. We're getting there.
We're getting there. Onboarding.
Right.
Cool. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you guys.
Any final thoughts? Give me a fun fact.
Fun fact
about Michael.
Again, what is your favorite color?
Oh my gosh, I never answered that. Are you serious? Oh man, my favorite color is actually red, believe it or not. Most of my wardrobe is blue for some reason, like light blue, but red's my favorite color.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Maybe like the Power Rangers or something affected that, but I don't know. Fun fact. I'm
Keep it PG.
I'm not that fun. Really not that fun. The one I always would tell, because it's just funny. It's sad but funny. We had like a pet turtle growing up. Her name was Cynthia. It's a very you don't even know where it's going yet.
Sorry.
So it was like a 6-year-old tortoise, like an Afghan tortoise, but like those things could live to like 100 years old. So it was
Did
probably
you
gonna outlive
get her when she was really little, or
yeah,
was
like
it-
kind of like yay big probably for those that are watching.
And how big did she get?
That's where the story turns. So we're outside, we're cleaning the tank, letting Cynthia roam free in the grass because like a turtle's not gonna get far on you, and it ran away. We couldn't find it.
She ran away. How big was she when she ran away?
This is a long time ago, but my dad thinks that a hawk got her.
Oh no.
Yeah. And he always tells a story. It's a really great story. He's like, his friend called, like his cousin called him. He's like, oh, John, like I can't talk right now. Like this is like, I can't find the turtle.
My turtle ran away.
He goes, yeah, the turtle ran away. He's like, how does it run away? And then he's like, stop. He's like, do yourself a favor. Stop looking for it. It was a really sad moment. And that's why I never really liked having pets after that. So
That is quite
no
a
pets
traumatic
after that?
experience.
I had a pet fish and that also, yeah.
Ran away?
Imagine. Yeah, I couldn't find him. It wasn't in the tank. I don't know.
No, I had a pet fish once, and I remember waking up the next day. It was on our dining room table, and so like the tank was like on this end, and it's like a longer table. We found the fish on the floor, on like the other side of the table, and my mom's like, I guess he just like
Didn't want to be here anymore.
just took a dive.
How dare you?
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
I love
Anyways.
pets. Well,
Yeah, it's not a fun fact, but it's a funny fact.
funny story.
Funny fact.
Michael and his.
And his turtle ran away.
Yeah.
It's funny what
Turtle
our
ran
parents like. I had some funny how our parents like attached themselves. Like your dad was so concerned about the turtle. Like we would have hamsters, and my mom was like, we'd lose a hamster or whatever, and she was like, "Oh, it's so sad. Like, do you want another one?" I'm like, "Mom, it's a hamster."
It's a hamster. Yeah, no, we
Turtle.
didn't really. Yeah.
Well, cool. Well,
Cool,
thank you.
yeah.
Thank you for your fun story.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
I got so many of them. Yep. It'll be in part 10.
Another episode.
Cool.
Got to bring back the viewers somehow.
Yeah.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Michael. We will hopefully have you back on here soon, and we will see all of you guys in our next episode.
Yeah. Bye.
Awesome. See ya.
If you like what you're listening to, be sure to follow the Athlete Cafe on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. You can find us wherever you enjoy listening to your podcasts.